Good morning, and thank you for having us at this conference. My name is Lily, and I am sharing this presentation with you alongside Ibtisam. And we are both students from Cardiff University who have just completed our final year placement, which was based on leadership and management. So today we will share with you our experiences of a leadership placement and how we applied various models of leadership within our projects. Like Professor Elizabeth said at the beginning of this day, leadership must adapt depending on the situation. And we will also explain why, as students, we think leadership education should be introduced in early stages of allied health profession programmes. So throughout this presentation, we'll provide evidence of how our leadership and management placement has helped us to develop our interprofessional working skills. So what and why is there a leadership placement? As a result of COVID-19, the School of Health Sciences at Cardiff University took on 2 students for a virtual placement. And 2 of us were lucky enough to be chosen for this placement, which provided an opportunity to learn various leadership theories, and a couple of which we will share with you today. And the main focus of this placement was to build our leadership skills while also working on other transferable skills linked with interprofessional development, which we can use in practice. Working alongside the senior management team has highlighted qualities of a good leader in healthcare, such as keeping up to date with current practice and leading by example. It has also highlighted the importance of effective leadership in a healthcare structure. As our placement evolved, we came to realise that leadership is not only about leading people within a team or leading service users in healthcare settings, but it is about also leading change within a service. We will talk about our experiences of both of these in terms of leading within occupational therapy and within a wider interprofessional setting. So using a compassionate leadership model, we were tasked with leading a project that would target healthcare students and contribute to a wider school initiative and investigate the student perceptions of areas of best practice and recommendations for development around current areas of interprofessional education, placement, and also simulation learning. And we used the model of improvement, so the Plan, Do, Study, Act model, to guide us with this project. A survey was circulated and the responses that we received were analysed, and a report was produced by Ibtisam and I, which we passed on to the management team. They are using this information at the moment to make changes within the school as part of their application to secure healthcare provision at Cardiff University. And this project is an example of leading change within an interprofessional setting. So it was nice to see the final application with these recommendations and how they've been integrated. This is part of the survey. Sorry, I've just got my notes. That we sent out with some of the questions, and we sent this to student representatives across the healthcare programmes to provide us with a holistic student view of the use of interprofessional education within their current programmes. And students from a range of professional backgrounds were involved, so that was physiotherapy, occupational therapy, nursing, midwifery, radiotherapy, the list goes on. So these were some of the questions that we asked them. And we use this model of compassionate leadership to be something that can be practiced in any healthcare setting between either the leader and their team or the leader and their patients and service users. As leaders of an interprofessional project consisting of students across each healthcare profession, we undertook a project using these 4 principles. So by using the compassionate model, we attended to the voices of the students by designing a survey, as shown on the previous slide. And by doing this, we provided a platform for students to share their opinions of the delivery of different aspects of their programme and how they would like them to be further developed. In the understanding, once the students completed the survey, we acknowledged that their recommendations would be addressed and changes would be made as required. And these responses that we received have helped us to identify the areas of best practice which students would like to see more of, and some of the changes that also they've recommended that need to be made. So we therefore produced a report with the recommendations. And in order to provide an empathic response, we went through a few stages. Having identified the recommendations by the students, we then related them to current policies and standards provided by Health Education Improvement Wales and other governing bodies surrounding the different themes. So finally, Ibtisam and I compiled a list of practical recommendations within our report that the students could act upon to improve the delivery of different areas of education, such as interprofessional education, while students continue to achieve their learning outcomes. And so sharing this report with the management team at the School of Health Sciences was also our way of helping the students. The team took our recommendations into consideration and are currently working on them. Within our role as students, this is as far as we could get in terms of leading the change, but we have now handed this over to the responsibility of the management team at Cardiff University to carry forward by making changes within the programme. And we have seen this to be being integrated within the final service evaluation. So I will hand over now to Ibtisam for the second project.
Hello, thanks Lily. So after about 6 weeks of learning about different leadership theories, attending, organizing and leading meetings with senior management staff and observing various leadership styles, we were presented with an opportunity to facilitate level 4 occupational therapy student problem-based learning groups. And within these groups, the students were given the opportunity to make a leaflet to explain the role of occupational therapy to different audiences within different scenarios. And the purpose of this assignment was to help students establish their own professional identity within an interprofessional setting, which is recommended by the Health Education England in 2018. So facilitating these sessions was a brilliant opportunity for Lily and I to apply the skills that we had developed during the course of our placement, such as empowering individuals within a team to take up various responsibilities and building positive and respectful relationships within the team. So in order to do this, we applied the action-centered approach to leadership. So this approach states that a leader has 3 key responsibilities, which are to achieve the task, to build and maintain the team, and to develop the individuals. This approach is by Adair in 1973, but he also wrote a book in 2011 where he states that the 3 factors actually overlap with each other, so such that the achieving the task will build the team and satisfy the individuals. And if the team maintenance fails, or if the team lacks cohesiveness, then the performance on the task is impaired and individual satisfaction is reduced. Lastly, if the individual needs are not met, then the team will lack cohesiveness and performance of the task will also be impaired. So in our case, what we did was, in order to lead the students towards achieving the task, first of all, Lily and I helped them identify the gaps in their knowledge, which we addressed as their learning needs. We then supported the chair of the group to divide the work and delegate the tasks. We assisted the group with providing a critical evaluation of their leaflet in order to prepare them for their final presentation. As we did this, we also worked hard to develop the individuals. So we did this by encouraging the more quieter members of the team to share their opinions. We also asked probing questions to assist individuals to reflect and to increase their confidence when answering questions. And lastly, we also ensured that every member of the team was involved in the decision-making of different aspects of the leaflet, which was therefore achieving the task. Lastly, in order to build a team, we appointed certain individuals within the group to take on roles of chair, scribe, and observer in order to improve the team dynamics. We also created a supportive environment within the team by asking students to support one another, especially in terms of technical difficulties, which was due to the whole coronavirus situation and stuff. So just creating a supportive environment was quite important. And lastly, through facilitating discussions, we were able to encourage healthy and productive conversations within the group which allowed the group members to get to know each other better and build stronger relationships. And strong team working skills are a cornerstone for interprofessional working. So this project has helped the individual students as well to gain a greater understanding of team working, which they can then use in clinical environments. So here's the big question. Why is leadership an important skill to learn now while we are at university? So according to the Health Education England in 2018, the universities are encouraged to prepare students to build their leadership skills from the beginning of their program. And they have recommended 3 stages of carrying this out. So to begin with, the first stage is to focus on developing a self-awareness and self-efficacy in order to build and develop leadership behaviors. The second stage is to then work with others and improve their interprofessional working skills and interagency working, especially now that they've already had an improved awareness of their own identity. And this corresponds with mine and Lily's understanding of one form of leadership, which we mentioned at the beginning, which is to lead a team within a complex setting. The final stage of maximizing leadership learning is through using evidence-based approaches to introduce positive change and improvement within healthcare settings. And this corresponds with mine and Lily's understanding of another form of leadership, which is to lead a change in practice. And working interprofessionally to improve service delivery reflects the interprofessional strategy that the university uses. Lastly, as future practitioners in Wales, we take guidance from a document that's published by the Welsh Government in 2019, which states that in addition to the core values of the NHS, another proposed value is driving transformative change through strong leadership, clear decision-making, and having more open and confident engagement with external partners. And this reiterates the importance of leadership education within healthcare education. And through our placement experiences, we have been able to see all of these stages in action. Actively developing our leadership skills throughout these projects has built our own confidence, and we feel this will have a positive impact on our individual practice as occupational therapists of the future. By sharing our experiences with you today, we have shown how we actively put leadership into action, and we hope to inspire any students who are in the audience to consider the ways in which they too can put their leadership skills into action. So just a short summary then. So as a result of our experiences, we have realized the importance of learning leadership skills early on in our careers as healthcare students. Students should be offered leadership education, and through various tasks, they should be encouraged to put leadership into action. Additionally, the interprofessional environment offers an opportunity for leadership to be viewed from different professional perspectives, encouraging greater understanding and compassionate care across boundaries. And lastly, it is a responsibility of all healthcare professionals to play an active role within the healthcare system, so learning from them to take into our own practice. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation, and we hope that you will also consider incorporating leadership education within interprofessional education. Thank you.
Today, I'm more than delighted to present the first results of my study on my project pertaining interprofessional identity formation in health and social care, in which I conducted a concept analysis of interprofessional identity. But before I'm going to discuss these results, I would like to give a brief introduction about what identity is and what professional identity is. So you could say that professional identity is a part of our core identity, of our ego identity. And this ego identity refers to the perception of ourselves about who we are as an individual, which actually is an answer to the question about who am I as an individual. Whereas your professional identity is your self-definition in terms about who you are as a professional, in which you think, feel, and subsequently act according to a professional that you're trained to be and that you aspire to be. And identities are formed mainly by social interactions, and in case of professional identity, this occurs during your professional education and with clinical interactions. Now, why is identity important? Because identity actually influences the way about how we perceive and subsequently act and interact with our environment. So you could say that our identity, they're like a set of glasses that allows us to make sense about reality. And hence identity also to a great extent influences how we act and how we behave. And this can be an interesting perspective in the context of health and social care, because if identity guides behavior, professional identity could also guide professional and interprofessional behavior. And this is a fairly new perspective that has gained increasing attention since 2016, especially with the amendment of Miller's pyramid, which you can see here on the right side, which was proposed by Chris et al., in which they state that you could add an extra layer of identity, so a type of identity-based education, which goes a step further than the second level he does action, which refers to competency-based education. And within this competency-based education, professionals, students are expected to demonstrate professional behavior in complex clinical context. Whereas identity-based education goes a step further, in which it's also expected that students, prospective health professionals, they also have the right mindset to think and to feel like they are a health professional, a health or social care professional. So there's actually a shift from the focus on acting like a professional and doing what is expected of a professional to becoming and being a professional. So there's also an impact on interprofessional collaboration. So we have this perspective of professional identity, but the main issue in contemporary education is that most of our the educational programs are organized in a uniprofessional way. This is often termed professional silos, in which students, they enroll in their specific, in their distinct educational program. They are socialized in a distinct professional culture, and when they graduate, they actually have learned and internalized too few interprofessional values, attitudes, skills, or knowledge to actually collaborate effectively and efficiently in practice. Aside from these distinct professional cultures, when they go into practice, there may also be perception of power differences, which can further complicate collaboration. And there also might be existence or development of stereotypes and myths. And these stereotypes and myths and misconceptions, they actually develop because of a lack of understanding and knowing the roles and responsibilities of other professionals. Aside from that, there can also be a conflict in interest because throughout the years, students have internalized their profession-specific goals and they may not always align with other professional groups. So what we are thinking is, if uniprofessional education leads to the formation of uniprofessional identities, could interprofessional education lead to the formation of interprofessional identities? And within our team, we posed that question, and this has also been discussed several times in recent literature. However, the issue is that the concept has been described and operationalized and used in a variety of ways, with lacking or with different description or notions about what its identity is. And it also remains quite unclear what the relationship is with professional identity. So this is the reason why we conducted a concept analysis, and the purpose of a concept analysis is to describe your concept in a rigorous manner, which we did according to Walker and Evans methodology, in order to facilitate understanding of your concept. So what we did is we tried to facilitate understanding by defining interprofessional identity in terms of the attributes, the antecedents, and the consequences. And these actually refer to, the attributes, they entail the characteristics, the properties, the elements that are part of interprofessional identity or that describe interprofessional identity, whereas the antecedents are those conditions for an interprofessional identity to form. In this case, these are the facilitators of interprofessional identity formation, and the consequences, they are actually what the outcomes are in case individuals or group members, they have formed or they possess an interprofessional identity. And we employed an integrative literature review in which we included 93 articles that employed interprofessional identity as a term or a synonym, and which have elaborated on this identity in their article. And we came up with this table of results, which were the result of data extraction of our attributes, antecedents and consequence, and subsequent thematization into categories and subcategories. And I want you to look at here in the middle at the attributes, the characteristics, because these are actually the main building blocks of our understanding of what interprofessional identity is. So as you can see here, the characteristics is the first main finding was that an interprofessional identity, in fact, is your professional identity that has been reconstructed, reconfigured, and extended with interprofessional values, attitudes, beliefs, knowledge, and skills, which have subsequently been internalized after learning them during education. And in the 3 boxes below, you see a list of those values, attitudes, beliefs, knowledge, and skills that we have derived from our included studies. And the knowledge and skills, they correspond to a great degree to the IPE competency framework. So in this case, you kind of remember Miller's pyramid. Identity is more than having learned those competencies. Now, the second characteristic has been described mostly in recent literature pertaining to interprofessional identity, in which interprofessional identity is in a lot of times considered to be like some sort of dual identity, in which there is a commitment or a sense of belonging to both the professional culture, the professional community, but also to a superordinate collective of interprofessionals. However, this approach or this theory of dual identity seems to be less applicable in healthcare, because this implies that there are 2 separate identities of professional and interprofessional, and this also implies similarity between professional groups. And if you want to facilitate forming such a dual identity, then you might actually induce amotivation and complicate collaboration, because professionals may feel that their unique professional identity is being broken down, is being threatened. So this might even have an adverse effect on collaboration. What we want to achieve with interprofessional identity is that you facilitate forming an identity that is, like I mentioned in the first part, is when you retain your professional identity, but you extend it with the knowledge, the values, the skills, the attitudes to recognize the interdependent relationship that you have with other professionals in order to achieve common goals. The third is context dependence. Simply said, your interprofessional identity becomes important, becomes activated, I would say, in situations that require your identity to become activated. For instance, in an intensive care unit, interprofessional behavior is more important than in a standard consultation in family medical practice, for instance. The fourth is the shared mental model of teamwork. This actually refers to the importance of team dynamics, because if you're the only person in a team that has developed an interprofessional identity, whereas the other team members have not, then this might actually suppress your identity. So you would be less likely to exhibit interprofessional behavior if other team members do not. And this is important to look at the left side of the table at the antecedents, further below the leadership in practice, because leadership plays a key role in interprofessional identity formation activation, because we need a collaborative leadership approach in which leaders are able to align the professional identities of their peers, of their team members, towards a common goal. By help of interprofessional coaching, conflict solving, creating an interprofessional environment, and fostering interprofessional socialization. And this brings us to the last characteristic, fluid and dynamic, which is consistent with other identities, in that our identities are mostly formed during higher education, which makes it important for educational institutions to invest in implementing interprofessional curricula, integrating educational strategies. And I believe that team-based learning is an important factor in achieving this. Thirdly, breaking down barriers in which you bring students from different departments together. And fourth, interprofessional role learning, in which students learn to assume the role of interprofessional. This brings me to my last slide to wrap up. So what we found is that interprofessional identity truly is a multidimensional and complex concept, but we still managed to develop an integrated conceptual basis of what this identity is, which may serve as a starting point for future studies for intervention development, assessment tool development, and assessment, and so on. We also believe that this could be one of the fundamental goals of education if you look back at Miller's pyramid, as it could be a missing link in facilitating interprofessional collaboration by targeting the identity of prospective health professionals. Thank you very much for listening. Here you can find my contact details, and you can also scan the code if you want to keep updated about my project. Thank you.
I am Dr. Hee-Young, teaching at Department of Nursing, Yonsei University in Wonju City, South Korea. Before I started my presentation, I would like to thank to committee members and staff who makes this conference happen, and let me have this wonderful chance to introduce myself as well as to present my research, which is still on the long way to go. And I would like to show my school for briefly. My school is Yonsei University Mirai Campus, which is located in Wonju City. And this is what my campus looks like this time of year, which is in the middle of winter. And my research was funded by Korean government as the following. And I am going to present my research as the following order. I think all of us do agree with the benefit and value of the interprofessional education. Especially research has been suggested interprofessional education is the best effective way to improve collaboration between healthcare professionals. In particular, collaboration between nurses and physicians is very common in clinical settings, which implies the need to focus on IP for nurses and physicians to ensure their collaboration. However, there is a lack of evidence to evaluate the effectiveness of a structured IP for student nurses and physicians. So my study was aimed to assess the effectiveness of IP intervention for undergraduate students in nursing and medicine compared to other and or no educational intervention. My research method was is not there is any special aspect of my research method because I just took the classical approach for systematic review. So I did my literature search with the assistance of a professional academic librarian with multiple databases, including these ones. And I have selection criteria with the types of studies, including RCTs and non-RCTs, and types of participant, definitely raw undergraduate students in nursing and medicine. And I included all types of educational training, learning, and teaching initiatives for students in nursing and medicine. And also types of measurement for the study were objectively measured or self-reported outcomes to evaluate the effectiveness of IP learning. Three reviewers independently reviewed 4,842 abstracts retrieved firstly by the librarian, and I identify all those that suggested that there was an intervention where interprofessional exchange occurred and education took place and objectively measured outcomes were reported. The intervention was evaluated using an RCT and non-RCT design. 46 studies were identified from this abstract search as potentially meeting selection criteria, and the full text of these articles was obtained. Any disagreement and uncertainties were resolved by discussion. 9 studies met the outline criteria, but I have to present the results in a narrative format because a meta-analysis of a study was not possible due to heterogeneity in study designs and outcome measures among researchers. So this is the flow diagram of my research. And as you can see, I started 4,000 record, and then finally included studies was 9. So in terms of systematic review, 9 studies was not bad, but the result, as I told you, the result of data analysis was quite different from what I expected, which made me impossible to do meta-analysis. It took quite a long time for me to decide the better or best way to describe my result. But this is what I finalized at least for this presentation. I think this is the nicer way to describe more clearly my result. So as you can see, there are quite different number of students in both professions involved in the study, and different types of intervention to implement IP learning and different outcomes. So I put some asterisks in red to highlight the effective outcomes in each study. So you can see in some study, most outcomes measured were effective. I mean, statistically significant between intervention groups and control group, but some of them were not significant. So I think studies indicated that IP interventions for nursing and medical students produced positive outcomes in some areas like attitude in resuscitation skills training and in ethical discussion, and confidence in clinical skill training, and attitude and knowledge in teamwork training. However, those studies reported significant positive changes in student skill, such as resuscitation skills, clinical skills, or teamwork skills. And the notable gaps discovered in this review include a lack of rigorous comparable research design and outcomes measuring impact of interprofessional intervention on student competences. So I think findings suggest that more studies with rigorous design are needed to establish the IP for undergraduate students in nursing and medicine. In particular, there is need to elicit findings related to the effectiveness IP on the performance and the OR skills, and to establish IP strategies to ensure this effectiveness in nursing and medical students as well. So these studies will provide evidence at higher level to support the effectiveness of behavioral competencies of the student, which may be expected to have a translational effect of IP for students into clinical settings. This is it. Thank you.
My name is Laura Taheny. I work in the Galway Clinic, which is a private acute hospital in the west of Ireland. It's approximately 146 beds, but we have a very, very busy day surgery, approximately 90 surgeries per day. I work as a clinical facilitator and registered nurse tutor in the Practice Development and Research and Education facility. I'm also a PhD student in the Centre of Person-Centred Practice in QMU Edinburgh, where I'm currently exploring an exploration into a healthful culture in a healthcare setting. But I'm here today to discuss how we support graduate student nurses through a bespoke orientation programme. It's one of the elements of my job which is actually my favourite. I spend over 6 months of the year doing this as part of my role as clinical facilitator. It comprises of a one-year programme whereby newly qualified nurses who have just finished their nursing degree, it's a 4-year programme here in Ireland, they move into the workforce as a staff nurse. And as you can imagine, there's some difficulties with transition periods, which is what I aim to alleviate. So the overall aim of the project was to develop a programme to support graduate nurses to become confident and competent professionals in the delivery of person-centred and world-class nursing care. The objectives of this research project was to review all current literature related to the transition period from student nurse to newly qualified nurse, examine the current nurse graduate programme which was developed in the hospital and identify areas which may need improvement, and co-create a bespoke education programme targeted to the learning needs which were identified specifically to each individual nurse. And then to also examine the perceptions of those who had previously participated in the graduate programme using an interpretive description research methodology to analyse the findings thematically. I just want to touch, I suppose, on current trends that have been in Ireland regarding graduate employment over the last 10 years. I suppose COVID-19 has changed this slightly because the blue skies and white beaches of Australia can no longer, I suppose, pull you in. So travel isn't as easily as you could have before. But we had seen that many newly qualified nurses were choosing to move overseas for better working conditions, better pay, better resources, and different nurse to patient ratios. I suppose I was particularly interested in the newly qualified transition period because in 2013, when I graduated myself, we were in the middle of a global economic recession, and we were only offered month-to-month contracts, which really left ourselves very vulnerable, and the majority of my classmates actually moved to England or Australia. But I think this is why many of different organisations have put focus on a graduate programme to try and, I suppose, keep staff and attract staff into the organisation. So before I started this research project, I had to look at my own ontological principles along with my epistemology to identify where exactly I fit into this project as a co-researcher. So I sit in relativist ontology. I believe that there is no reality. That reality is intersubjectively based on meanings and understandings on both social and experiential levels. My research paradigm is of interpretivism, where there is no single reality or truth. Reality is created by individuals or groups. I felt that it was really important for me to identify this and I suppose be aware of my own biases and reflexivity throughout this process, because I wanted to work as co-researchers as opposed to me doing research on participants. So my research values sit in fairness, openness, accountability, free will and mutual respect. I utilise the principles of person-centred research from McCormick and McCants, and also the person-centred practice framework to guide my principles of research and ensure that I am working with people throughout the whole process. So to begin with, I had to do an integrative literature review to synthesize all known research on what is related to the transition period from student to staff nurse. I had to learn facilitation skills, utilizing a model of critical allies and critical friends, which was developed by Michelle Hardiman and John Dewing, which enabled me to facilitate learning in a different way, because I had been educated as a nurse tutor, and I suppose we all learned didactic teaching strategies, some innovative strategies. However, I had never done work like this before. A lot of our the ways in which we worked had creativity, reflective practice, and a hermeneutic approach, because I hoped to utilise transformational learning as opposed to behavioural or constructive. So in order to know where we were going, I first had to evaluate where we were before. So the graduate nursing program had been in the organisation for quite some time. However, it was a slapdash approach where there was much focus on didactic learning, face-to-face in a synchronous way. There was no emphasis on learning in the workplace. Instead, it was, we must all go out for learning opportunities. We have to be in a classroom. And because of that, the cohort of the previous graduate program were not involved in the interview process later on. Instead, we chose to dive right in. I looked at how we could co-create a program with the individual graduate nurses to make a bespoke program on an annual basis. The program was aimed to support, mentor, and enable newly qualified nurses to develop both in confidence and competence in their basic nursing knowledge and skills, but also taking it to a different level whereby they could undertake professional development activities to further progress them as a researcher and a critical thinker in practice. So I endeavoured to change the focus from cognitive and learning, cognitive behavioural and learning theories, even though the art of nursing in itself incorporates all theories of learning, because we're learning by doing, but I focused on utilizing Mesereau's transformational learning theories. So how did we move from the focus on training to transformational learning? We had to look at the way in which we were doing things, beginning from the interview process. The interview process previously was a question and answer process about, you know, how do you do this skill? What would you do in this situation? Instead, we changed it to a workshop whereby the graduates were invited to come into the organisation and explore their values and beliefs with person-centred practice. We utilised reflective practice in that situation to see how they would fit in with our core values and beliefs as an organisation. The nursing graduates completed a self-assessment of their learning needs, which was based on Benner's stages of clinical competence, which was able for them to identify where they needed additional help. This self-assessment centred around our core competencies from our nursing board in Ireland, but also medical and surgical nursing competencies. From that, we were able to create the curriculum of their learning. Each person had an individualized learning plan which we co-created and were able to bring with them onto the ward. There was support for them to attend bespoke education days and workshops, and we also looked at creating a mentorship program so that each person would have their own mentor when they were working in practice. And this is something that we are doing in greater detail at the moment, because we have found that at times there was role confusions with the mentor, where they still felt that the newly qualified nurse was a student and was stopping them from progressing in certain tasks. So we are in the process at the moment of working with the mentors to develop their facilitation skills so that they can support that nurse in practice. We also utilise clinical supervision, which gives the professional support and learning to assist those in developing in practice through regular discussion with their mentor in practice or me if necessary. It creates a safe and supportive space where much of the learning occurs actually in practice. Much of our delivery of this education moved towards principles of practice development with enlightenment, empowerment and emancipation. So we began with semi-structured interviews on which were conducted by somebody independent of the study. There was an ethical issue in that because I delivered and developed the program, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to conduct the interviews. So the interviews were completed by somebody independent. And the aim of the interviews was to ascertain the perception of those who had participated in the graduate program. Those who were interviewed it was purposeful sampling. They were staff members who had participated in the graduate program. We were able to transcribe the data. They were transcribed verbatim, and we then were able to complete coding, thematically analyze using Braun and Clark, and utilized Sally Thorne's interpretive description for analysis. The creative reflections were then completed by the nurses who were currently undergoing the graduate program. It was a way in which they had never reflected before. We utilized evoke cards, poetry, and also creative methods. But also they participated in guided reflections using a reflective model of their choice, often John's model of reflection, to really ascertain where they were going, what they wanted to do, and how they were feeling in the midst of practice. When they first came, we were able to see that they were a little bit unsure, very uneasy, and used words such as irritated, scared, concerned. And as we progressed through the program, you could find that they were using words such as safe, happy, and comfortable, which really spoke for itself. The emergent themes that came from the data were time to flourish, confidence in providing care, and supportive environments. When we came to time to flourish, they had stated that they felt that they had additional time to receive all mentoring and support they needed in their work and in their time to progress from student to staff nurse. Confidence in providing care, they stated that all possible help was given to them. I have a quote here: "I feel very confident and happy as a staff nurse. This program will surely boost your confidence and give you a great start into their nursing career." And supportive environments, I always felt that there was support for me. If there was anything I was unsure of, I could speak to somebody and talk it through. So we have some outcomes going forward, and I suppose feed forward to tell you what's happening next. So the organizational benefits, the graduate program illustrated that there were higher levels of retention of those nurses who were supported during our program, with over 63% of them remaining in employment in the organization. 12% have actually left, whereas the other percentile are currently on leave, and I think most are on holidays in Australia, unable to get back. So this leads to greater patient satisfaction, safety with the confidence and competence of the nurse. We're undergoing a development of a mentorship specific facilitation program because the mentor must also be supported to be able to facilitate the learning of the person. They must consciously engage with the newly qualified nurse as a colleague and not a student. And research has shown that while hospital units are very, very busy, it can actually be the best place to learn as you're using active learning strategies. But the mentor must actually first have the skills and knowledge to be able to facilitate this. So we're also going to evaluate the perceptions of, we're developing a program for the mentor to have these specific facilitation techniques. We're going to explore the perceptions of the mentors who are supporting the newly qualified nurse. And also, unfortunately, we'll have to further review the teaching pedagogies and strategies for 2021 because it's not as straightforward as previous. We have to take into consideration social distancing, face mask wearing, and perhaps look at different maybe innovative strategies for teaching and a further review of the programme. So I'd like to say thank you. Here we were pre-COVID last February, myself and the graduate nurses, they're the 2020 cohort. And if you have any questions, I'm more than welcome to answer.